Hey guys, Jordan here, and today what I wanted to talk about was Civil War. Now today I'm going to be having a look at Civil War's issue 0 and number 1. So if you haven't heard much about the Civil War, there's obviously a new one, and the main competitors being, as you can see here, Iron Man and Captain Marvel, those being the two leaders of the sides. What it's about I'll get into as I talk about the comic. Now, getting into this, the first thing we come to is a courtroom in New York City, where we see Jennifer Walters, also known as the She-Hulk, trying to get what she works as a lawyer, so she's trying to get one of her clients, a villain previously known as the Jester, from going back to jail for probable cause of committing crimes later on. So this scene essentially just confirms our stance that people shouldn't be judged on like what they've done before, and that the future should dictate what should be done with them next, if you understand what I'm saying. Next we cut to Latveria, home place of Doctor Doom, where we find Colonel James Rhodey, or James Rhodes, as War Machine, essentially trying to put down an insurrection occurring there, as Latveria is now under American control. We then cut to James Rhodey again, this time not in the War Machine armour, in the White House Situation Room where he's talking to the President. The discussion here basically turns to what James Rhodes will do after he's hung up the War Machine armour, and the President suggests he could easily go on to become the next President. Then we cut to Ohio State University, with some characters you haven't seen before, the main two here being Ulysses and Michelle. They will come in important later, but basically they're just talking, and then the Terrigen Mists arrive at their school. Now, if you don't know what the Terrigen Mists are, it is a large kind of gaseous cloud that floats around, and anyone who has mutant genes that are not activated within them, these Terrigen Mists will activate them, and they will go into cocoon, and they will form some sort of superpower, as happens with all the Inhumans. So basically we see that Ulysses and Michelle, the girl he was talking to, are affected by the mists, and two cocoons form around them. We then cut to the Triskelion, the headquarters of the Ultimates, where we find Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, is greeted by Doc Samson. Now, Doc Samson is someone who tried to cure the Hulk's wife, Betty Ross, of a rare blood disease, I believe, and then in doing so, by siphoning some of the gamma energy from the Hulk's transformation, was himself affected by gamma radiation, and gained superhuman strength and green hair and apparently eyebrows. So he is a doctor, and with his strength he retains all of his knowledge and intellect, doesn't lose it like the Hulk. So basically they just have a discussion about leading a normal life and balancing your normal life with your superhero life, and how it's very difficult to lead some sort of civilian life being a superhero. So this comic is more of an ideological standpoint type thing more than it is an action based comic. We then see the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, where the She-Hulk meets up with the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Maria Hill, and basically their discussion ends in Maria Hill revealing that Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk's client, as she was protecting in the first couple panels, the criminal previously known as the Jester, has in fact been killed in prison, which she is obviously not very happy about. We cut back to Ohio State University, where we find the cocoons open, and Ulysses steps out with no immediate obvious physical changes or superpowers. But the girl Michelle, who was previously cocooned also, comes out as some sort of red demon creature and flies off. Now we see Ulysses actually did gain a power, and we see his eyes glow red, and we see him in this sort of apocalyptic wasteland looking area, where we see a big splash page with the destruction of a city of some sort. We're not told what city this is, however it's clear that there's some sort of destruction coming, and that his power is in fact to see into the future. Now this will come into play quite heavily in issue 1 and setting up the rest of the comic. Okay, so having had a look at issue number 0, or the first issue released, we will now have a look at issue 1, or the first official issue. Now, this is I don't know if it's a special issue, but it's done quite nicely. It's a more laminated cover than usual. It's an all the way around one. We get some nice artwork and it's quite thick. So as you can see, we get the kind of more iconic cover here. We see Captain Marvel standing off against Iron Man, the two leaders of the opposing sides. In this we also see Ulysses in the background, engulfed in some sort of power there. And on the opposing sides with Iron Man, we see Peter Quill's Star-Lord, although he does not appear in this comic, and we also see Sam Wilson as Captain America. On Captain Marvel's side, we also see Jennifer Walters as She-Hulk, and we see Spider-Man, the Peter Parker version. And I say that because Miles Morales also appears in this comic. That being the Spider-Man from the Ultimate Universe, who is now here. So we cut to Columbus, the woods near the first campgrounds that Ulysses was at. We see Ulysses running through a forest, questioning why it won't stop and why he's being tormented by his powers. We are then greeted to the cast of the Inhumans, led by Medusa, who say that they can help him. And as we see here, we get a nice full page showing all the Inhumans and what they look like. So, moving on, we see that Ulysses has been recruited by the Inhumans and that they have found him. Then we cut to Manhattan. We see an unmasked Tony Stark as Iron Man, well, the rest of the Iron Man suit on. Clearly in some sort of scuffle on the ground. We also see Miles Morales as Spider-Man, Sam Wilson's Captain America, Sam Alexander's Nova, Kamala Khan's Miss Marvel, and that is it for just now. And we see that they are engaged in some sort of combat. They all look bloodied and beaten, and they clearly have a very tough fight ahead of them in Manhattan. And this is revealed here when we see a nice splash page, some sort of city destruction and some sort of giant celestial being that they are fighting against. So, moving on. This is the cast of the Avengers currently that I've just described. And we also get the arrival of Jane Foster's Thor. And with her, she brings the Ultimates and the Inhumans. So now that everyone's here, they say there's some sort of plan to be enacted. We see there's some smaller celestial beings perhaps, or some smaller robots. It's not exactly said what these are. But we see Iron Man and Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, fighting side by side. We also get the arrival of the Sorcerers, this being the Scarlet Witch, Hellstrom, Dr. Voodoo, Wiccan, Shaman and Magic. And of course, Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. Now we see that the Ultimates, Inhumans and Avengers are all essentially just holding them off. So that the Sorcerers can perform a large enough spell to send whatever creature this is back to its own dimension. So yeah, the next couple pages are essentially just the creature being sent back to its dimension. The Sorcerer is clearly expelling a lot of energy to do so, and some other superheroes protecting other people. So they're successful in doing so. The creature is returned to its dimension, and we see a successful job all round with no real injuries. So a job well done. And to celebrate, everyone returns to the Stark Tower, including the Inhumans and the Avengers and the Ultimates. So what we see here is essentially a big discussion where She-Hulk is questioning Carol Danvers about what the massive creature was, and she says she has no idea, and that she actually got this information from the Inhumans. So when they question the Inhumans on where this information came from, about how they knew the giant creature would be there, this is when Ulysses is first revealed to everyone else, the Avengers and the Ultimates. And we find that Jean Grey is present to try and attempt to read his mind and see if she can experience what he experiences when he has these visions. And what we find here is that Jean Grey is actually unable to read his mind, claiming that his mind can't be read. That his mind's like a closed system. Essentially what we find is that Carol Danvers is eager to bring him on to be part of the Ultimates or the Avengers, or to use him in future combat, whereas Tony Stark is very sceptical about the matter. Tony Stark is very questioning, and Carol Danvers is very keen to use him in future matters. So then we see a bit of back and forth between the two, and essentially this sowing the seeds for the disagreement that would later come to be, and the main driving force behind the Civil War II. We find that Ulysses has another vision here, and is essentially experiencing again what he is, how he's been trained by the Inhumans to control his powers, and how they took him in and helped him. So essentially, what we find here is that Tony Stark is being extremely skeptical, is not very, it's not wanting to use this power at all because he feels that it's only potential futures and is clearly not the future that will happen. Whereas Carol Danvers, as Captain Marvel, is very keen to use this because he said, as is the case today, lots of crises can be averted. And with this panel here, we see the two facing off, not in a kind of angry stance just yet, but more just sowing the seeds for the future conflict. We then continue on. We find that Ulysses, in the base of the Inhumans, is having another vision. So what we find now is that a mission has occurred in which Colonel James Rhodes has in fact been killed. Tony Stark arrives on the scene extremely angry, wondering how this has happened. So then we come to Tony Stark questioning what the hell has happened, how this travesty has happened, and we see also that Carol Danvers is sitting beside an extremely injured and in critical condition She-Hulk. We find that She-Hulk has at least been crippled, and when Tony Stark asks what happened, Carol Danvers simply replies, Thanos. Moving on, we get a splash page of the Ultimates, or at least a group of heroes here, including James Rhodes, fighting Thanos, one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe. Well, it's a story for another time, but essentially one of the most powerful beings in the entire universe. So then we get a very tragic panel here of Thanos in fact punching a hole through James Rhodes and very clearly killing him. When Tony starts to question Carol about how she knew that Thanos was going to be there and how they could ambush him, she reveals that she used Ulysses, who we previously discussed having the premonitions of the future, to ambush Thanos and repel him from the Earth. So Tony Stark's view here is clearly his best friend has been murdered, and this is obviously the worst way to go about it. People will die. You can't look into the future for potential futures and act upon them. Whereas Carol Danvers is coming down hard on the fact that James Rhodes knew the risks. He knew they knew very well they could die, and that they should keep doing this because their plan actually did work, and they managed to repel Thanos despite its such great costs. We then find that the She-Hulk tells Carol Danvers that she should definitely continue with her course of action. The future is not up to Tony Stark, and with that she flatlines, and we find that the She-Hulk also dies. And the last panel here is Iron Man flying away. Now, what this has done is this has set up the Civil War very nicely. The first two issues, I've enjoyed them so far. The Zero issue is more of a subtle one, talking about ideologies and essentially sowing the seeds for the more heated conflicts that will start to occur here. And then this number one has some very dramatic reveals, the death of both She-Hulk and James Rhodes, members from either side of the conflict, or the argument. So this essentially will lead us into further conflict about heroes picking sides, about who will go where, and what will be the fate of the Marvel Universe. So if you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. If you have any comments, please leave them down below. And I thank you for watching. Thank you very